Why do some people survive diseases that others don't? Two people get infected by the same virus. Same age, same hospital, same treatment. One recovers, the other spirals into severe complications. For a long time, we blamed luck, or timing, or vague ideas about stronger immune systems. But there's a quieter factor at work, one that doesn't show up on scans, doesn't hurt, and doesn't change no matter how healthy you live: your blood type. It doesn't just matter during emergencies or blood transfusions. It shapes how pathogens attach to your cells, how aggressively your immune system responds, how easily your blood clots under stress, and in some cases, whether your body turns a mild infection into a life-threatening crisis. Here's the unsettling part: your blood type can make certain diseases more dangerous for you, while making the same diseases less dangerous for someone else. Not because of lifestyle, not because of choices, but because of microscopic markers on the surface of your red blood cells. Markers your immune system uses to decide what belongs and what must be destroyed. And those markers weren't designed for the modern world. They evolved thousands of years ago, shaped by plagues, parasites, injuries, and environments our ancestors faced every day. Some of those ancient adaptations still protect us. Others quietly increase our risks. In this video, we're going to break down everything you actually need to know about your blood type: how it works, why it exists, and how it can influence survival in ways most people never think about. To understand why some bodies fight harder and others lose faster, we have to start with a basic misunderstanding, because most people think blood types are simple. They're not. Most people think blood types are just letters: A, B, AB, O. Something you fill in on a medical form and forget about. But those letters are shorthand for something much more serious. Every red blood cell in your body is covered in tiny molecular flags. These flags are called antigens. They're not decorations, they're identification. Your immune system constantly scans these markers, checking every cell it passes. If the markers look familiar, the cell is ignored. If they don't, the immune system attacks. That's what a blood type really is: a rule book for who belongs in your bloodstream and who doesn't. Here's where people get it wrong. They assume blood types only matter when blood is mixed between people. But those same antigens don't just interact with donated blood. They interact with bacteria, with viruses, with parasites, and even with proteins your own body produces. Because many pathogens don't just float randomly through your body. They attach. And what they attach to often depends on the exact antigens you carry. That means two people can be exposed to the same disease, but the disease doesn't interact with their bodies in the same way. In some cases, your blood type makes it easier for a pathogen to stick. In others, it makes attachment harder. That difference can decide how severe an infection becomes. This is why blood types didn't evolve randomly. They're the result of long-term pressure. For tens of thousands of years, humans faced waves of deadly diseases with no medicine, no antibiotics, and no hospitals. If a certain blood marker reduced death, even slightly, it spread. If it increased survival during childbirth, injury, or infection, it stayed. Blood types are evolutionary compromises, and every compromise comes with trade-offs, which brings us to the first major one. Because one blood type is famous for being protective in one deadly disease and dangerous in another. There's a common assumption that if one blood type is good, it must be good across the board. That if your blood helps you survive one disease, it probably protects you from others too. But biology doesn't work that way. Take blood type O. In many parts of the world, people with type O have a surprising advantage against severe malaria. Malaria parasites don't just infect red blood cells. They cause infected cells to stick to healthy ones, forming clusters that clog tiny blood vessels, especially in the brain. This clumping makes malaria far more dangerous. But the A and B antigens make that clumping easier. Type O blood lacks those antigens. So in people with type O, those deadly clusters form less often. Blood flows more freely. Severe complications become less likely. In regions where malaria was common for thousands of years, this mattered. Even a small survival advantage meant more children lived long enough to pass that trait on. But here's the flip side. The same feature that helps type O resist malaria makes it more vulnerable to other diseases. One of them is cholera. The bacteria that cause cholera release a toxin that targets the lining of the gut. And that toxin binds more strongly to the molecular structures common in people with type O blood. During major cholera outbreaks, people with type O were far more likely to develop severe symptoms. Not because they were weaker, but because the bacteria interacted more efficiently with their cells. So type O blood carries a trade-off. Protection in one deadly disease, higher risk in another. There's no winning combination, just different balances of risk shaped by history. And those trade-offs don't stop with infections, because blood type also affects something far more dangerous in the modern world: how easily your blood clots. Most people assume blood clotting is either normal or abnormal. You clot, or you don't. But clotting exists on a spectrum, and your blood type quietly nudges you along that scale. People with blood types A, B, or AB tend to have higher levels of certain clotting proteins circulating in their blood. One of the most important is a molecule called von Willebrand factor. Its job is simple. When a blood vessel is damaged, it helps platelets stick together and seal the wound. That's a good thing. You don't want to bleed to death from a small cut. But too much clotting ability creates a different problem. Clots can form where they aren't needed, inside arteries, in the heart, in the brain. And when that happens, blood flow gets blocked. That's how heart attacks and strokes begin. Studies have consistently found that people with A, B, or AB blood types carry higher average levels of these clotting factors than people with type O. Type O blood, on the other hand, tends to clot a bit less efficiently. That can mean slightly higher bleeding risk in some situations, but it also means a lower baseline risk for dangerous clots. Here's where evolution steps in again. In a world without surgery, without blood banks, without trauma care, clotting quickly was an advantage. If you were injured while hunting, if you were wounded in conflict, if you were giving birth, stopping bleeding fast saved lives. So blood types that promoted clotting survived. Today, we live in a very different world. We sit more, we live longer, our arteries take decades of wear. And now that same clotting advantage can quietly increase the risk of cardiovascular disease. This doesn't mean your blood type determines your fate. Lifestyle still matters far more. But blood type acts like a background setting, a risk dial you didn't choose. And there's another situation where that dial matters even more. Because in pregnancy, blood type isn't just about you anymore. It's about how your immune system reacts to someone else growing inside your body. Most people think pregnancy is dangerous because of complications you can see: bleeding, infection, physical trauma. But for most of human history, one of the deadliest risks was invisible. It came from the immune system itself. This risk has nothing to do with the A, B, or O system. It comes from another marker on red blood cells, the Rh factor. If your red blood cells carry this marker, you're Rh positive. If they don't, you're Rh negative. On its own, being Rh negative isn't a problem, but during pregnancy, it can become one. If an Rh negative mother carries an Rh positive fetus, small amounts of the baby's blood can enter the mother's bloodstream, often during childbirth. The mother's immune system sees those Rh positive cells as foreign, and it remembers them. During a first pregnancy, this usually causes no harm, but in later pregnancies, those immune memory cells can cross the placenta and attack the red blood cells of another Rh-positive fetus. The result is a condition known as hemolytic disease of the newborn. Without treatment, it can lead to severe anemia, organ damage, or death. Before modern medicine, this happened without warning. Healthy pregnancies followed by unexplained stillbirths. Doctors didn't know why. Families didn't know why. It wasn't until the Rh factor was discovered in the 20th century that the mechanism became clear. Today, this risk can usually be prevented with routine screening and medication. But the biology behind it is ancient. It's the immune system doing exactly what it evolved to do: protect the body from foreign cells, even when those cells belong to a developing child. And this isn't the only way blood type creates hidden differences between people. Because beyond disease and pregnancy, blood types are unevenly distributed across the world. And that unevenness tells a story about human survival. If blood types were random, you'd expect them to be spread evenly across the planet. They aren't. Some blood types are common in certain regions and rare in others, and those patterns aren't accidents. They're evolutionary fingerprints. Type O blood, for example, is extremely common in parts of Africa and the Americas. Type B appears more frequently across Central Asia and parts of the Middle East. Type A is more common in Europe and regions shaped early by agriculture. These distributions suggest that blood types were shaped by local threats, different diseases, different diets, different environments. In areas where malaria was widespread, blood types that reduced severe infections gained an advantage. In regions with frequent bacterial outbreaks, other blood markers offered better protection. Over generations, even small differences in survival mattered. Blood types didn't evolve because they were perfect. They evolved because they were good enough under specific conditions. And when humans migrated, mixed, and settled new environments, those traits traveled with them. This is also why no blood type is universally better. Each one represents a different solution to ancient problems, and some of those solutions no longer match the modern world. Which brings us to one of the biggest misunderstandings about blood types today, the idea that they define who you are. In some cultures, blood types are treated like personality traits. Type A is organized, Type B is creative, Type O is confident, Type AB is mysterious. It sounds scientific, but it isn't. There's no solid evidence that your blood type determines your personality, intelligence, or behavior. Those ideas are cultural traditions, not biology. What blood type actually influences is far less dramatic and far more important. It affects how cells interact, how proteins bind, how the immune system recognizes threats. Blood type doesn't shape who you are. It shapes how your body responds under pressure. Two people can make the same lifestyle choices, eat the same foods, exercise the same amount. But when they're exposed to certain infections, injuries, or stresses, their bodies don't react identically because their internal rules are different. Blood type is one of those rules. It's subtle, it's invisible, and most of the time, it doesn't matter. Until it does. And when it does, the difference can be life-changing. There's one final piece of this puzzle that ties everything together. A question scientists still don't have a complete answer to. Why blood types exist at all? If blood types sometimes increase risk, sometimes reduce it, and never offer perfect protection, a natural question follows. Why do they exist at all? Scientists still debate the full answer, but most evidence points to one idea. Blood types are not designs, they're leftovers. They're the result of countless small survival advantages layered over tens of thousands of years. In ancient environments, dying young was common. Infection, injury, childbirth, and famine shaped who lived long enough to reproduce. If a specific blood marker slightly reduced death from one threat, it spread, even if it increased risk from another. Evolution doesn't aim for safety, it aims for continuation. That's why blood types persist even though none of them are ideal. They're compromises that worked just well enough in the past. Today, medicine can override many of those old rules. Transfusions can be matched, pregnancy risk can be managed, infections can be treated, but the biology hasn't changed. Your blood still carries the same ancient markers, your immune system still follows the same recognition rules, and your body still reacts according to systems shaped long before modern life existed. So when two people face the same disease and experience very different outcomes, it isn't always luck. Sometimes it's history. Written in molecules, passed down silently, and operating beneath awareness. Your blood type doesn't define you, but it does remind us of something easy to forget. Every human body is a record of survival, not perfection. And as science continues to uncover how these hidden differences work, one question remains open. What other invisible rules inside your body are quietly shaping your life, without you ever noticing? We explore those hidden rules here. Subscribe if you want to keep uncovering them.